Rosemary is from the Center for Sustainable Transformation, right? Okay, so tonight we're going to discuss the topic illegal mining impacts in Ghana, a look at the new LI 2462. And to help us discuss this topic, Daryl Bosu, Deputy Executive Director, Arocha Ghana, and Audrey Quaye, member of the Ghana Environmental Action Group. Good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Right. So Business PM is kindly brought to you in partnership with the Center for Sustainable Transformation. Once again, good evening, and this is our weekly show, the SDG-Hub, here on Asaase Radio. On every Tuesday evening, we discuss and enlighten ourselves on challenges and opportunities in achieving the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, as we call them for short. Here on the SDG-Hub, we introduce you to business cases and activities that in one way or the other are taking steps towards a more sustainable future for Ghana and beyond, to ensure we are all up to date and can take part in the necessary sustainable transformation we have to make for people and the planet to thrive both in the present and the future. My name once again, Emmanuel Aboagye-Wiafe, tonight with
Rosemary Balami.
Right. So it looks like we have to move straight, and today we're going to shed light on a critical issue plaguing our beautiful nation of Ghana, which is Galamsey. I guess it's now become a household name globally.
Exactly.
Yes. We are diving deep into the issue of illegal mining and the impacts it has, taking a closer look at the new LI 2462 Environmental Protection Instrument 1, while some CSOs called for its revocation.
Yes, Emmanuel, it's an issue of paramount concern in Ghana. Galamsey, derived from the phrase gather them and sell, is local Ghanaian parlance, which means illegal mining, small-scale gold mining in Ghana. This informal and often illegal mining practice has garnered significant attention in recent years due to its devastating impact on our environment, communities, and economy. It is imperative that we engage in meaningful dialogue, raise awareness, and, work together to address this pressing issue.
So tonight, we'll be hearing from the experts who have dedicated themselves to finding solutions, and also conveners of the protest who will give us an insight to illegal mining activities and their reason against the LI 2642. Together, we will uncover the root causes, environmental implications, social injustices, and economic challenges associated with Galamsey. And our guests tonight, Daryl Bosu, Deputy Executive Director, Arocha Ghana, and Audrey Quaye, member of the Ghana Environmental Action Group. Once again, you're welcome to our studios.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good to see you and good to have you here tonight.
Same here, it's a pleasure.
All right. So like we always do, we want to know some things about you. Can you briefly tell us about yourself, Audrey first? What do you do on a daily basis?
I'm currently retired, but my background is in accounting and finance.
Okay.
I'm actually not a mining
person
expert, but I have developed an interest and knowledge about environmental issues as they pertain to the mining sector. I'm a member of the Ghana Environmental Action Group, and this is a non-profit organization that is located, registered in Canada, and has members located in Canada, the US, Europe, and Ghana.
Oh, wow, fantastic.
And these are mostly Ghanaians who are concerned about Ghana's development issues.
Okay.
And the core group of people are actually Ghanaians who, originate from the Western region. And the effects of Galamsey was affecting their families. And they decided to take action and put together a petition that was delivered to the government to do something about Galamsey.
Okay. I guess by now the scope would have expanded because it's not only about Western region people. We have Galamsey going on the Ashanti region,
etc.
Right. Daryl,
Yes.
Tell us about yourself.
Yes, so I'm an ecologist, but I have an ecologist background, and with a lot of experience also in low emissions development, conservation finance, and I currently work for Arocha Ghana as a Deputy National Director.
Okay. Arocha Ghana, what do they do?
Arocha Ghana is an environmental organization, started 1999. We've been working in the country since, and we work across the country, in the north and Ashanti region and the eastern region, and also with interventions along the coastal communities. And our work mostly focuses on protected areas and forest reserves. We believe that as people, our lives interfaces with nature, and our livelihood is actually interlinked. So if we don't care for nature, our livelihood will also suffer. So we do whatever it takes to try and bring in some balance into the way we interact with nature to meet with our livelihood needs.
All right. I'm giving you a short break because I'm starting with you. My first question to you, what exactly is illegal mining, commonly known as galamsey? I mean, it's a household name, but we want to really know what it is.
Yes, so illegal mining, according to research and also the background, comes from several years of, people engaging or taking gold from the land and using it. But somehow we had some of our, I would say, colonial masters who interacted with us, seeing it as it became gather and sell, and our people always struggle with trying to say what the white people are telling us. So we say galamsey, eventually short form galamsey. But in actual fact, it means historically, it means gather and sell. That in itself should tell you that it is not something that is very current. People have for a long time in the history of Ghana, if you look at the records from as far back as the 1400s, Ghana people have extracted gold. And they've done it in several ways, artisanal ways, and mostly artisanal ways, until very recently. And then we also saw the coming in of the, I would say, industrial scale mining companies. They were doing it at a very large scale, and sometimes going to concessions with government. But aside that, we've also had people who have been doing the artisanal, and they were doing it, and then they were doing it where they actually dig for gold along our rivers and streams, sometimes in forest reserves. And the way they used to do it, they actually go into the ground, so you don't see the surface mining as we are seeing now. They go into very deep into the ground. So if you go to a lot of our forest reserves in the country, you see some of these historical activities of
mine pits. They become death traps sometimes.
Well, somehow they have found ways to cover up after digging. So for most of the pits you see, they've tried to fill it back. It's not complete, but it's good. And because it's a forest reserve, it's not a place where you see, it's not a place for thoroughfare, people going there and all of that. So I think eventually, these mining for gold everywhere by several people eventually escalated to the point where, like you say, it's become a household name. And now everybody knows that gathering or going to mine for gold anywhere is now considered galamsey.
When did it become illegal? Because like you're saying, in the past, way back down there, people were extracting gold but using unorthodox means. And so when did it become illegal?
I think the legality came in when government came out with several allies or even laws. Act 703, for example, talking about Minerals and Mining Act, which actually now came to specify who can mine and who cannot mine, where you can mine and where you cannot mine, the regulations you have to pursue when you are on site, when you are mining. So if you do not adhere to the existing regulations on mining, or you mine in the wrong place, then that becomes illegal. So legality is only specified by the law that gives both the boundaries for which people can work. So if the law is saying don't mine in forest reserves or don't mine in rivers, and you go mining in those areas, then your activity becomes illegal.
So what could be some of the environmental impacts? Of course, we know a lot, but specifically, tell us.
I think the way we have been doing the mining for some time now, and as we have seen it, and because mining involves removal of vegetation, where the mining activity happens, you've seen that people have had their crops or their farmlands converted or come under siege by these illegal miners. So we've had direct impact of people having their crops destroyed. Again, because of the activities of mining involving the processing that they even have to use sometimes heavy metals like mercury, which is introduced for processing. Aside that, mining in itself kind of goes to turn the soil, and originally the soil already has got some heavy metals in them, like cyanide and other chemicals in there. So once you turn the ground, the earth, turn it upside down, you're exposing the surface soils to some of these. So you have incidents of heavy metals in the land, and if people are cropping on these lands after mining, then there is exposure. There's something we call bioaccumulation, because the heavy metals are in the soil. You plant your crops, something will take it up. So the plants take up these heavy metals, and it gets lodged in these plants. And when you go and harvest your food crops and you take it. So because of that, the World Health Organization has come out with some acceptable levels for soils that are used for cropping to have certain, I'll say, quantities of heavy metal traces of heavy metal. Beyond that, it's considered very harmful to your health. So one thing about mining is that it brings also the negative impact of exposing our food crops or food systems to heavy metal contamination, which have been seen to be responsible for several other illnesses like kidney diseases, and some are also nerve-related brain damage and all of that. So for that reason, it's really an issue that we need to be concerned about. Again, miners definitely will make use of water resources in processing, and even when they are done, they need to throw away or wash away their mineral process everything back into the streams, and this eventually goes to contaminate a lot of the rivers and streams that we know a lot of communities in Ghana depend on. Most communities are not really connected to the water treatment system or the water system, Ghana Water Company system. So most of them depend on surface water bodies. So if these water bodies are contaminated or diverted as a result of the mining activities, then you see that communities are then also exposed to all the issues of heavy metal contaminations that some of these rivers are exposed to. Again, mining also brings into the community some level of activity that was hitherto not there. For example, a lot of social vices. There are instances where communities or women have said that when they saw the mining activities happening, they saw an opportunity to trade. But later on, they realized that, okay, I am trading, I'm selling something, I'm able to get money and bring to the house. But my child, because of the mining, is not going to school. And also, a lot of people are coming into the community. Some are smoking. There are also issues of prostitution as a result of all the people who come into the community to do mining activity. Because if you go to a lot of the mining communities, most of the people who are actually engaged in are foreigners. Some are from other places. So all of these leave traces of negative impacts on the community, and they will have to struggle to cope with
That's very eye-opening right there. So now let me come to you, Audrey. You know, somewhere early this year, you called for government to suspend small-scale mining activity. Why is that?
Well, we realized that we had actually written a proposal to the government to address the ways in which the government could mitigate some of the effects of galamsey and small-scale mining activity. And we felt that there was a need for the government to halt and re-examine its approach to small-scale mining activity so that, and galamsey, so that some of the negative effects could be mitigated. We delivered our proposal to the government, but never had, and not just the government, we also addressed, the issue with several stakeholders, the National House of Chiefs, and they are affected because the small-scale mining and galamsey mining takes place in their communities. We also, even approached the Chief Imam and other stakeholders that we felt could make an impact, including the,
But was there any response when you sent this proposal?
The fact is that we saw that there was a change in the conversation. So we saw, for instance, the Asante Hini beginning to address some of the issues and actually using some of our language. We also saw that kind of positive response from the National House of Chiefs president. And that was encouraging. But we never had a chance to actually sit down with the minister himself to address the issues that we had raised in our proposal. And
what were some of the issues?
Well, we felt that there had to be a sort of a 3-stage approach to addressing the issue. Number one, the government was making an effort by bringing in the military, but that was not really successful. And so you would have a situation where miners are, their excavation equipment would be seized, and then they would move into another area and continue the activity.
So it wasn't an effective approach.
It was not an effective approach.
Okay.
And so there needed to be a halt so that they could look at what they were doing and whether things could be done differently. We also brought up the issue of alternative livelihoods, because a lot of these young people were actually getting into galamsey mining because they had no other alternatives to employment.
Okay.
And quite a lot of them were ending up with kidney disease and early death, but they were willing to take the risk.
So kidney as a result of, is it mercury exposure?
I think it was a mercury exposure. There were doctors who were talking about this because they were seeing it. You also had situations of young people who were having kids with, deformities that we have, I personally have never seen those kind of deformities. And, there was concern because these were occurring in particular areas, people who were coming from areas where there was galamsey activity.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you. So let's come back to you, Arocha, Daryl. So in the past few months, we saw that, Arocha and some CSOs called for the revocation of the new LI 2462. So could you provide an overview of the, this LI and why the move to repeal it?
Okay. So I think before I do that, let me give some historical context.
Okay.
Ghana has for a long time been progressively working towards sustainably managing our forest reserves. Yeah. And so somewhere in 1999, they realized that a lot of our forests had come under pressure, particularly from mining activities. And some of these were not anybody's fault per se, but some administrative lapses. Okay. I mean, in terms of managing forests, sometimes the mining concessions that come. So in 1999, the government said, let's come to an agreement where even if we can allow mining in some of our forest reserves, there is a limit.
Okay.
So in 2000, they came out with guidelines on mining, environmental guidelines on mining in what they call production forest reserves.
Okay.
I'm saying production forest reserves because in Ghana, there are two categories of forests. We have over 280 forest reserves.
Okay.
And these are in two categories. One is production. The other one is protected forest reserves.
Okay.
And the production is forest reserves that allow for some level of extraction and also some activities in there that can remove forest items like trees and all of that. And in that way, so to a certain level, you are expected to have some inevitable degradation and also forest loss in those areas.
Okay.
But because it's for plantation and tree production, there was always a plan to reforest and also try to, like a forest, a plantation in rotation. That was how the government was running those areas. And there were also the protected forest reserves, which were forest reserves dedicated specifically to serve as repositories of habitats that serve as habitat for biodiversity and also provide very crucial environmental services like water services and also climate amelioration services and also serving as windbreaks. So if you look at the map of Ghana and if you look at the location and distribution of forest reserves, they are actually sitting or providing crucial sources for almost all the major streams that you see in this country.
Wow.
The Pra, the Densu, all those things that you see, those rivers that you see, they're very much connected. So the guideline was, even though we cannot do away with mining, let's limit it. So the guideline was to limit mining in production forest reserves to just 2% of production forest reserves, excluding all protected forest reserves. Fast forward 2012, government came out with the policy, Forest and Wildlife Policy of 2012, which specifically said that progressively government was going to go on a pathway to exclude mining from all our forest reserves. So from 2% limitation to progressively all forest reserves. So it is very much retrogressive to come to 2022 in the midst of we working hard to achieve climate action points, address issues of sustainable development, and even the challenge of biodiversity laws, to have a new law that says that all our forest reserves are now practically open.
Okay.
The only thing you need to do is to demonstrate that it is in the national interest.
Oh, wow. So now, like following the protests that Arocha and other CSOs had, were there any responses from EPA? And what are the next steps going forward?
Well, I think we have taken several steps because there are some very serious and fundamental issues we identified that led to the passing of this ally, I should say. First of all, even though the EPA and other government agencies had been engaging CSOs as far back as 2019 to look at making sure that the guidelines on mining in production forest reserves was actually improved, enhanced, and made more stringent because of the onslaught of Galamsey, we were not engaged or participated in any process leading to the passing of this ally. So first of all, it breaches the principle of inclusive participation and also consultation of stakeholders. Secondly, the law is actually rolling back all the progressive actions Ghana has undertaken towards sustainable forest management. And so we wrote to the EPA to tell us what really led to this ally, and they couldn't do that.
Wow.
So what we have seen is that, of course, like was said earlier, the Ministry of Environment has passed this ally. Because it's a law, the process to take now is to go back to the lawmakers.
Okay.
And I'm sure you are all aware that even not too long after the LI was passed and became public, some legislators were also up in arms and asking, how did this LI come to be passed?
Right.
So these are all the issues that are coming up, and I believe that we need to really pay attention to. And we think that,
Audrey, so one of the reasons that have been cited by people who engage in Galamsey is the fact that it's a source of livelihood for locals and other people who cannot readily get jobs. What then should be the alternative for these locals, and how can local communities and citizens contribute to such efforts to combat illegal mining and protect the environment?
Let me just add something to the history he provided us. Throughout our history, and he mentioned from the 1400s, the Europeans reported that they were not involved in mining. Our people mined and sold the gold to the Europeans, and they did so without damaging our rivers and land. Fast forward to the early I would say late 1800s, early 1900s, a group of Fanti businessmen invited British engineers to collaborate with them to establish Ashanti Goldfields mechanized mining operation. They were already in operation, but they wanted to do mechanized deep pit mining. So we have had a history of our communities being involved in mining. So you cannot, for instance, go to the Dentra people and tell them you can never do mining anymore, or the Ashanti people. They have been involved in mining for hundreds of years, and they did not destroy the environment. And fast forward to modern times, what happened was that the community miners were then sidelined, and most of the concessions went to large-scale mining companies, right? And with the economy being as bad as it has been, and we've been through a lot of political turmoil and economic, turmoil over the last, I would say, maybe 50 years or more, you have people who have really been pushed to the wall in terms of young people who have been educated because of Ghana's FQ program, and then subsequent free SHS, and so you're churning out graduates who then don't have jobs.
Right.
Okay. So there aren't enough companies to absorb the graduates that are coming out of school. Out of frustration, some of these young people are turning to Galamsey mining, despite the risk involved.
So is it justified enough?
It is not. It's not justified in the sense that the extent of environmental degradation and damage is so extensive to the point where you can even see it from satellite map, right? And you can see the damage to the land, you can see the damage to the rivers, and we have to get a better handle on how we do what is now being referred to as community mining. So yes, what
are some of the alternative
livelihoods? One of the things that we suggested, for instance, was that to restore the land and the rivers, the youth could be employed to fill in the pits and help reforest the areas that have been denuded of vegetation to stabilize the soil after the restoration. We also did research and determined that, for instance, to restore the rivers, the rivers can be restored after a period of time if there's no galamsey action, but it's going to take a while. To restore the rivers more quickly, the use of carbon, carbonated material, could be used to restore the rivers more quickly. To get such carbon, we suggested the planting of bamboo, for instance. We also talked about redirecting the use into processing, into agriculture and food processing, and into the tourism industry.
Very exciting conversation.
Very exciting. Yes, exactly.
You had one question.
Yes, exactly. So there's this international treaty, Daryl, called the Minamata Convention on Mercury in 2013, which is intended to protect people and the environment from the harm caused by exposure to mercury. Now, our country, Ghana, has been a signatory since 2014 and even ratified the Minamata Convention on Mercury in 2017, which will completely phase out the use of mercury in the country for mineral extraction by 2025. We are in 2023. How feasible is this, considering the fact that as it stands now, the laws regulating small-scale gold mining in Ghana do not forbid the use of mercury?
Well, I think in terms of the targets, we are not able to meet it. I mean, that's obvious. But I think I need to say that we've seen the government taking some steps to introduce what they call the gold catcher. Now, this is a good initiative, but the question is, how large scale is this? Are they only rolling out to a few people? But I think what is even more important is the fact that we need to try and regularize all the activities of the illegal miners. We need to have a system where we can trace where everyone who has committed or decided to mine is working. If you don't have a system that can trace where anybody who is taking gold out of our land is working, you can introduce 100 gold catchers, it will not mean anything. Indeed. So I think we still have a long way to go. The process of gold mining, be it small scale, large scale, or medium scale, needs to be traceable. Until we make the whole process traceable. Trace somebody who has a concession, where they are working, how they are working, the safety of the people on site, where the gold is going, the chemicals they are using, eventually the end use of that gold. If we are not able to trace it, we can't deal with issues like this. But we should also forget, a lot of the mercury is coming through the black market as well. So you might try with gold catcher, but you can't get
very
all of
eye-opening.
Yes, very eye-opening.
But
we might have to do a part 2 maybe.
I guess. Exactly. Maybe a part 2 would do.
Sure.
Well, unfortunately, this is where time will allow us. Thank you, Daryl and Audrey, for sharing your
It's a
expertise
pleasure.
and
Thank
insights
you.
on this conversation. It has been an enlightening experience. It's a collective effort indeed, and we encourage our listeners to stay informed, support initiatives that promote responsible mining, and report any illegal mining activities they come across. So please tune in same time next week as we continue discussions on all things sustainable development right here on Asaase Radio 99.5, so that people and the planet can prosper. If you have any topic you want us to discuss, please share with us or shoot an email to sdghub@cestint.org. Remember, dear listeners, the future is in our hands, and it's our responsibility to ensure a healthier planet for generations to come. Keep raising your voices, keep advocating for change, and keep tuning into SDG-Hub for more insightful conversations. Until next time, stay informed and stay inspired.
Thanks so much for staying with us. SDG-Hub is a program. We've been speaking to Daryl Bosu, Deputy Executive Director, Arocha Ghana, and Audrey Quaye, member of the Ghana Environmental Action Group. I've been your host, Emmanuel Aboagye-Wiafe, together with
Rosemary Balami.
Back to Andy.